Hello, everyone, and good evening. It's really nice to see you all. I'm really happy that you could all come to this event. It's been a long time since I've seen some of you for sure, so thank you all for coming. Before I start, first of all, I want to say that it's really wonderful for me that Rachel and I are doing this together. Rachel's a very dear friend of mine, and I'm really happy that she's the host this evening. So thanks, Rachel, for being here together with me to do this. I'd also like to add my thanks to my publisher, Andrea O'Reilly, who strongly supported this book all along. And so we're here because of Andrea, so thanks, Andrea. And again, of course, to Octopus Books and to Greg at Octopus also. I'd like to introduce Susan Olding, who is my awesome literary editor, and also Diana Smith, who's the artist whose encaustic painting has become the cover of Falling Together. And finally, before I start, a special shout out to my family and extended family who are here from Montreal, Ottawa, Peterborough, Calgary, Vancouver, Victoria, and of course, Gatineau. So a little bit about the book for those of you who might not have read it yet. Falling Together divides into two main sections. The first section really swirls inside the maelstrom of a family and mental illness, right? And that's, of course, my family. That's the family of me, my two daughters, Alessandra, my older daughter, and Renata, my younger daughter. The second section of the book, it holds the texture of grief following the death of Alessandra. And it holds this texture through various periods of time, through to 5 years. So I'll read small parts from both of these sections, and some of the small parts will just be, in fact, just fragments of parts. So, and I'll do this somewhat chronologically. Okay. Alessandra turns 9. At home, her moods swing. She can't sleep, feels hopeless, and rails against herself. She shows me her big toe. I gasp. No nail. She's worked it off, pulled it out completely. When she turns 10, now, one morning, she's under her desk at school, incoherent. When we arrive at the children's hospital, someone hands me a prescription for her. We leave. Driving home, I stop for ice cream. Maybe this will make her feel better, make everything fine, make her coherent. But of course not. What was I thinking? So now, moving along in time, the next part I'll read is from her mid-teenage years. That day, heading to the storage area in a corner of her basement, I leaped back at the sight of a noose hanging from a rope around a steel rafter. Shaking, I cut it down with a ladder and knife. I wait for Alessandra to come home, but she doesn't. I call houses where I hope she may be. I call hospitals. I call the police. Still later, someone from a gas station calls to tell me she's there. When I find her, we go to the hospital, where after some hours, she's admitted. Dear Mom, what can I do? I want to have a normal life. Dear Mom, DNR. So now moving further ahead in time now, Alessandra's now an adult. And as an adult, she lived in a variety of different types of places. So the next part is from a time when she lived in her own apartment, and she's now in her 20s, and her partner is Robert. On the first and cold Saturday in January, Alessandra tells Robert she wants to die. She goes by herself to the emergency unit of a nearby hospital. A doctor sees her, sends her home. The next day, she returns to the hospital, afraid that she will kill herself. Another doctor sees her, sends her home, where she goes, distraught. Robert says If you want to kill yourself, do it. Go ahead. She moves onto the 5th floor balcony. Robert says, jump, you might as well. Alessandra moves to the outside of the balcony ledge. She holds on, looks down, looks back. Then she's not there. Her best friends, 2 sisters in the apartment beside hers, walk out the front door on their way to buy groceries. Kay looks to the left, then Doreen. They both scream. Someone else phones for an ambulance. Kay and Doreen take the bus to the hospital, her best friends. I meet them when I arrive. They need calming and I calm them. Maybe I need calming, but Alessandra needs me. The computer screen beside her bed has a tiny arrow pointing to one of her vertebrae. The doctor asks her if she can tell when he touches her leg. No, she can't. Oh, please, please feel, focus hard. Then you'll feel your leg. But she can't. Doreen and Kate come back to the hospital next morning. Finding their friend semi-conscious was hard for them, they tell me. Neither had slept well the night before. How can you sleep after you've seen that? They ask me. After that visit, they don't return. Alessandra's broken spine doesn't recover. It takes time, but her emotions and her spirit get fixed, then later break again, then get fixed again, more times than I remember. Okay, so now slight change of tempo, a slight change of focus here for a minute. In writing the book, I was really drawn to lists. I was drawn to lists as a way to break through some of the emotional juggernauts that were facing me. So this is a list of some of the effects of psychiatric drugs. It's about mixing medications, and mixing medications is commonly called a cocktail. The art of mixing medications, a cocktail. What goes nicely with what? How much of each? How many can you mix together? Add one, take one away, raise a dose, lower another, keep one the same for now. Try a new one just to see what might happen. Makes you dizzy, makes your head swirl. Another new one just to try. Head churning, tongue thick, mouth like newspaper. Wobbly, fog all around. Slow on the pickup. What to say? Feet go forward slowly, heavy to lift. Tired, so tired. Sleep all day. Days and more days. Days slip. Morning pills slip into tiny plastic cups. Drink up, swallow, prove it. Noon pills slip the same. Evening too. Night pills slide into some type of sleep. Sometimes sort of sleep. So at some points in the book, I use the third person when I'm talking about myself. So I am the mother in this. So here I am at one point where I'm using the third person. The texture of her daughter's mental illness seeps into the mother's life, coils itself around her, and with its way of bending life, shifts her emotional landscape. How to write the straitjacket of mental illness. How to staunch exposure of her inner self, the loss of safety, the isolation of the loss. Her focus curves to stem crises, to create new meaning within the shedding of dreams. How to fit in the world, hold burnout at bay, unlearn, learn. So this now is the end, towards the end of the first section, and it starts now several years still several years on, starts several years later on a Christmas day. It's 9 a.m. The hospital's main floor atrium is empty, except for Renata, Alessandra, and me. I place a small tablecloth on a round table in the middle of the room and bring out the food. We eat, open gifts. We might be any typical family on a typical Christmas morning. Almost. An hour later, the cardboard box repacked, Renata and I drive home, satisfied that somehow we've made the most of it. We've carried on a family tradition, however crookedly. At 8 p.m., Alessandra phones. Christmas dinner at the hospital was delicious. For a moment, I smile. 6 months later, we go to ground. I've left Alessandra inside a hospital too many times. A desolate feeling, missing someone who should be at home. And so often on a night, walking out of a hospital, a wind comes around a dark corner of the building and catches me, makes me lonely. Most assuredly, I have now lost count of her hospitalizations. Alessandra's next home becomes a room in yet another hospital. Her new home, an even tighter space where she languishes. The bar for caring is low. Life marked by thin purpose, by waiting, to be transferred into bed, out of bed, for medications, for her catheter to be changed, for meals, for a visitor, for a phone call, for the locked unit door to be opened so she can enter or leave, for fresh air, for a proper home. Alessandra remains here for 11 and a half months. This is where she died. So now we're moving into the second section of the book, of course. For years, I had been keeping my phone beside my bed at night, just in case emergencies had happened. I knew there would be another emergency, another call would come. But the shock when the phone rang in the night after, I didn't meet Alessandra for breakfast. I should have known. Renata opens the door to Alessandra's room and walks in first. Away from the clamor of the ward, the room stuns with a brittle silence. Renata whispers something to me, then moves towards her sister. She strokes her sister's head. Oh, Alessandra. Later, we want to stay, not sure how to leave, how to go to the door, open it, and walk away. Never to hear her voice, see her smile. How to walk into a life without her. But I do open the door. I stop, look back, and whisper, goodbye, Alessandra. At the front desk, a nurse points to 3 garbage bags containing her clothes and belongings. We take them. Renata and I leave the hospital, leave Alessandra, leave life as I know it. Her clothes, a ring, a watch, glasses, books, we carry her belongings home. When I open her wallet, it contains $6.10. Her money, all of it. I keep it on my bureau for 4 months. Lacrimation. The word is distinguished, hushed. It rings so gently, so nobly on the inner ear. And Jesus, just like us, Lacrima Christi. But tears are not gracious. They're jarring, hard to control, undignified, public. Many cups of tea are offered, and I drink from each one. My stomach swells with tea. Tannin stands for love and care. After the memorial, I won't drink tea for months. I don't know how to believe that my daughter is dead, So I say to myself, it's hard to believe. As if saying that might produce belief. Maybe she'll visit, or maybe she'll phone and say, let's go out for breakfast, and we'll decide what time we'll meet at Rockin' Johnny's. I hear about death cafes, death games, courses, memorials that celebrate, laugh, cheer, refuse mourning. But this tangle of grief, depression, burnout, all roped together. How long until the loosening and untangling? And then to what? Restless, I wake up one night and go to my window. Snow falls, the scene idyllic, a sign of the world moving, while I remain stuck. I watch the night snow tumble down from its dark source, like tears down a face. How to contain grief. I bring some of her ashes to the ocean's edge on the Bonavista Peninsula in Newfoundland, where I stay for a month. Her ashes briefly color the water as tiny wavelets trickle towards them, then lightly twirl and dance. I wave to Alessandra as the ocean takes her. You belong here, your life back to the sea, where all our amoebic ancestors rock gently in the wind and waves. Waving to her seems right until my waving hand holds my head. With a sudden pang, I realize that Alessandra truly is not coming back. She slips further and further away. So now moving along in time, now it's 3 years after her death. So this part is from 3 years later. I want to talk with Alessandra, sing with her, pass morning strawberries and croissant across the kitchen table, fill our coffee cups, lean towards her, and sometimes disagree, challenge, argue. Then lean toward each other again. More coffee? So here's the very last part, and it's in my imagination. So in my imagination, she's speaking directly to me, then I speak directly to her. And just to set this up for a little bit, for a number of years, she was part of the Propeller dance group, where she had once sung at a performance the song, What a Wonderful World. She sang this on stage, a cappella, in front of a large audience. So this part also refers to that. So this is her start talking to me and then me talking to her. So it's her. Have a coffee for me. Don't let new friends not know me. I said I couldn't live if you died first. It would be too hard for me. I quit smoking months before I died to be healthy, my strength to quit. I had no plan to leave life so soon. Sing my favorite song today, loud. What a wonderful world. Dance a little, like we did, carefree. Dear Alessandra, I'm sorry I didn't know how close you were to death, but were you? My determination, the best home for you, never came. Your life's colors were so bright, but the empty space at the table, they're not there at each celebration. I say your name and fight against the fading of memories, even as time rushes farther away. I remember you singing, What a Wonderful World. You saw trees and flowers and birds. You watched the seasons change. You sang that the world is wonderful. That's what you thought. Like Louis Armstrong, Satchmo, with his fulsome trumpet-playing style, who changed the way music was played and heard. Thank you all for listening. It's been an honor to read to you from my book.
Thank you, Donna. It's, I look at people, I think we're all moved by what you read. And I think it's a great honor. It's a great privilege to get a glimpse of your experience, for you to have shared so openly something so intimate and moving. And I would like now to invite people to ask questions to you about that experience, and to just write them in the chat so that maybe we can explore further with you the realm of what you have shared. And looking at some of the questions there, maybe we can start with the core question: why did you write the book?
Thanks, Rachel, and thanks to whoever asked that question. I think there are several reasons. First, there's not a lot written about mental illness and families. There's not a lot written about families and grief. So I kind of felt some responsibility to write about that. You know, how mental illness actually lives with a family. It moves in, it can create a train wreck, but the train wreck, of course, is amidst all sorts of other good things, lots of love, fun, you know, really nice times. And also what grief does to a family. And, you know, in this grief-averse society, you know, how do you articulate grief, right? It's tricky. So that was one reason. I think on a more personal level, I had to order the chaos that was in my mind. You know, I had to kind of interrogate what happened because my mind was so chaotic. So I wrote, I think, to see clearly, to make sense of the chaos. Before that, I really hadn't allowed myself, I hadn't permitted myself to analyze, to look really clearly. I know the writer, Joan Didion, who says that she writes entirely to find out what she's thinking. So I guess in that way, I was writing to find out what I was thinking, but to think my way out of the chaos, right? And I think the other reason that I did this was to speak the silence. You know, the size of the silence was so large, and that was my silence, the silence of others, the silence of society's systems and institutions. So I guess the main reasons for writing then are the ordering of the chaos in my mind, and also to speak that, speak through that large and into that large silence. Yeah.
And I think thank you, and I think I speak not only for myself, but I look at the comments also in the chat. It's very emotional. It was for me very emotional to read the book. It's emotional to listen to you reading it. How hard was it for you to write it? Or was it hard for you to write it?
Oh, it was hard, yeah. You know, it's a personal book. And I think the hardest part, at least for me, of writing the personal was that it was so personal. It was hard. Emotionally, it was hard. I had to write mostly in small doses, take breaks, sometimes long breaks, sometimes shorter breaks. But it was painful to bring some memories back and to see them in my mind. You know, it was quite draining. For me, showing my world wasn't easy. You know, the book describes a particular type of parenthood, you know, both before and after my daughter died. And it describes that type of parenthood quite front and center, and that wasn't easy for me to open up. for those of you who know me, you'd probably say that I'm an introvert. You might be right. And I think some people have even told me sometimes that I'm kind of a private person. So I guess some of you have to change your minds now, to tell my story. I think I really had to kind of throw off that cape of the private person, the introvert, at least for now. Anyway, so that wasn't easy. I also wanted the book to be concise, right? So there was much, of course, that I didn't include. And so deciding what to include and what not to include was also somewhat difficult. And I think in terms of how hard it was on a broader level, you know, so much in our world really works to keep mental illness, to keep grief, to keep death hidden away and not for people to talk about it much. And also so much works in our society to keep the functioning of our social systems and our institutions hidden away, how they work. And we know this through COVID, right? So it's easy to look the other way. So for me, looking at all of that, looking at mental illness, grief, death, the social systems, etc., looking at all of these so close up, that wasn't easy. It wasn't easy at all. Yeah. I think mostly that it was so personal, though. That was the biggest reason.
There's a question in the chat asking if once you got going, did it become a bit easier?
No. The short answer is no. No, I don't think it became easier at all. Yeah. Emotionally, it was hard. Yeah.
And in the book, we catch glimpses of you know, the family life, Alessandra, but what was Alessandra like?
Yeah. You know, in the book and in the reading, I talk about how she sang the song "What a Wonderful World," and she believed that. She was actually an optimist, except of course when she wasn't, when she was ill and not feeling good. She was not an optimist. But basically, her approach to life was as an optimist, and her strength was that she really wanted to be happy. You know, she was fun-loving. She was blessed with a lot of energy. She was one of those people who have a lot of energy. And she was much more than mental illness. And I think that was maybe another reason why I wrote the book. You know, our kids who have mental illness, they're more than just kids who have mental illness. And our kids who have died, you know, they're more than just kids who have died. Now, she's, of course, my daughter. She's a sister, friend, a niece, a cousin, an aunt. You know, she's lots of other things. She loves sports. She was really good at sports. She was really good at fixing things. She loved giving gifts. She was really generous. And she really loved animals. She worked one summer at the experimental farm with cows and horses. And another summer she worked at the Wild Bird Care Center. She really loved to celebrate. She loved holiday seasons. And so often, quite frankly, the holiday seasons sit heavily on my heart. You know? She had a really big smile. Now, having said all that, I know that we tend to focus on the positive when we talk about someone who's died. So, you know, I'll say that when she wasn't feeling good, things could be difficult, really difficult. And also because she had so much energy, people with so much energy can drive you to distraction. And so that was also there in her mix. Yeah. Yeah. That was her.
We have a feeling we can do a bit better. Yeah. And was writing the book therapeutic, cathartic for you?
Cathartic. I think that sometimes writing can be healing, but not in this case. So I wouldn't say cathartic. Certainly wasn't a cure for anything, and nothing went away because I wrote. But also, although it wasn't cathartic, there were quite a few significant positive aspects. So it was more like realization more than being cathartic. It was more like, you know, I'd been living in the eye of a storm. And when you live in the eye of a storm, you can't see beyond the periphery, right? And I think I had pushed a lot to my mind's periphery. So that as I was writing, you know, at one point during I was writing, I was thinking of what Jungians say. And they say that one becomes enlightened by making the darkness conscious. Now, I did not become enlightened by writing this book, but the part of making the darkness conscious, for me, I think that was, you know, making what was on the periphery of my mind conscious. You know, it opened that part of my mind that I had to, or at least I had, closed off, right? You know, they say the benefits of excavating your life. So writing, you know, the daring of writing, because it was daring for me, actually felt like lights turning on sometimes as I wrote. I held something else in my mind as I was writing, and it kind of stayed in the background. And it was something that Judith Butler, the philosopher, has asked and has written about this in her writing. And that was the question of, in these days and these times, you know, whose life counts as a livable life, whose death is grievable, whose death is ungrievable. So I kept that as a background guide as I was writing. So in that sense, no, it wasn't cathartic, but it was valuable for sure. Sense of, you know, making that darkness conscious, more for realization and pushing the eye of the storm away. Yeah, I think that's what it did for me.
And so clearly the process was really intense and difficult, and you went through all that. And now, what would be your hope for the book?
Whoever asked that question, thank you. It's a good question. It's a big question, actually, and it covers a number of sub-questions. So I would like to talk about it to whoever would like to talk about it more at another time. So, but I'll just say this in any case. I think we need to tell more stories about people whose lives aren't necessarily regular, right? Stories wake us up. We understand ourselves better through stories. So I hope that opening up my experience might encourage others to speak about their experience, right? And maybe it'll allow someone to speak their story, you know, a story that for them is difficult to speak about, you know, that they can speak through the silence of their own world and speak through the silence of the exterior world, right? Sort of liberation to do that. So I think there are a lot of ways that a lot of things that I hope for this book. I think that's that idea of allowing someone or encouraging someone to really speak through their own silence is probably one of the key hopes that I have. Yeah.
And I see that the theme of hope for the book seems to trigger reactions. And would you have something to say about the healthcare system? Do you have a hope for some impact on the system?
Whew.
It's a big issue.
Yeah. I guess that I think that both the healthcare system and the social system, I think that there's a lot that can be improved. And I think that the safety net, at least for my daughter, that safety net had huge gaps in it. And sometimes there was no safety net, and sometimes it just would fallen apart. So I think my hopes there is that the a tightening of the safety net. Yeah, lots can be improved for sure. You know, I'm thinking as you say that, a couple of months ago, maybe February, maybe March, CAMH, which is the largest mental health hospital in the country, did a report on anti-Black racism. And what they said in the report was that that anti-Black racism, that the healthcare system is built on a foundation of anti-Black racism, a foundation of anti-Black racism. So one of my hopes, I would say then, is that you know, that report and that strategy that they have, that can be really listened to and really cared about. You know, in the report they talk a lot about some of the differences. You know, outcomes differ. Black patients are more likely to be restrained, get needles, more likely to be dismissed, their experiences diminished. So, so yeah, I think there's room there, in addition other ways too, but there's certainly room there for the healthcare system and the social system to, you know, to be improved, right? Yeah.
Thanks for those insights, and I'm sure, I mean, stirring up all those memories is certainly something difficult. And could we ask, how are you now?
Well, we're all works in progress, aren't we? But I do think, though, that when, you know, when a whole family lives with mental illness, it takes its toll. You know, it's a stress of protecting, of advocating, searching for solutions, you know, dreading the next crisis. And when a family lives through a child's death, also, that's not easy, right? I do think, though, that meaning is where the healing is, right? And for a period of time, I had walled my mind, right? And through writing, I unwalled it. And I did this through, you know, through grappling with wanting to know, with wanting to find my blind spots, right? So having done that, unwalled my mind, I think that, you know, I'm no longer anticipating something dreadful that could happen. I'm no longer in what actually was a no-win situation, you know, except that at the time, I couldn't see that, right? I had to keep trying to get what my daughter needed, what my family needed, right? So, so that makes me more relaxed now that that's not in my life, right? So I could say that maybe I have more courage. Maybe I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot, that's for sure. Yeah, and I've really understood more about that meaning is where the healing is, right? So yeah, that's where I am now, I guess. Yeah.
And so clearly, from what you see, I mean, some things have shifted and have evolved. And so now, when you look at the book, are there elements that you would write differently today with the perspective you now have?
Yes, I think there's one major thing that I would do differently. And, you know, I referred to it earlier when I talked about CAMH. I don't think in my book that I gave fair treatment to the role of race, you know, that racism was in fact central to my daughter's life, right? And so if I were to write it now, I would look more squarely at anti-Black racism, for sure. And I would treat race more as it deserved to be treated, because it was a central reality, right? It's really easy to not pay attention, to assume that paying attention means, you know, you're making a situation out of something that's nothing or blowing something out of proportion. So it's really easy to put it to the side. But yeah, I think if I were to do it now, it would be, to really give the book a fair treatment around race. Yeah.
You would speak more about, as you said, race, but in the book also you never mention Alessandra's diagnosis. Was there a reason for that?
Mm. Yeah, she defied an easy diagnosis, actually. She had various diagnoses, and these kept changing. One would be suggested, then changed, and then back, and then a different one. So she never had any diagnosis that really stuck, that stayed. But I think, one thing I think is for sure that the diagnostic Bible, the DSM-5, has certain constraints, right? Of course, it serves some purposes, and of course, it has some benefits. But it's also, it's a blunt diagnostic instrument. What diagnosis, where would my daughter as a young woman fit, right? Who's had so many adverse experiences, right? So many, that it would complicate things too much. And I think that's one reason that she never had a diagnosis that really fit, right? The list of her adverse events, goes on and on, right? Abandonment, poverty, being institutionalized at a young age, right? Neglect, sexual violence, physical violence, living in an orphanage, living in an environment of bullying, and this all before the age of 8. And then, in Canada, for her, as I mentioned earlier, the real breakdown of the health and social safety net for her. I think all those things really contributed to making a clear diagnosis for her tricky, maybe impossible, right? Yeah, difficult anyway. Yeah.
And I see in the chat that for some people who haven't read the book, there's a question: are we to assume Alessandra was Black? Could you give a bit of the background around Alessandra?
For sure, yeah. I guess I assumed everyone had read the book. Don't assume that. So both my daughters were born in Brazil, and they're both also birth sisters. Alessandra came to Canada when she was 8. Renata came when she was 4. Yeah, so that's that background there.
And when you were reading earlier, you were mentioning too that at times in the book you write in the third person. Why did you do that?
I think I did that to save myself. Actually, doing that allowed me to step back, to see myself clearly, and it allowed me to see myself clearly in a few ways. One was, I know shame well, right? My earliest memories have to do with shame, right? My upbringing bred shame, right? So when I started to write about shame, although it was something that's like this middle ring that I've carried around me all my life, when I started to write about it, I tried in the writing to distance myself from it. So to look at it from a distance and to try to be more objective with it. So I think turning myself into the mother, into the third person, really helped me to have that step back and to see myself more clearly. Yeah. A bit of a relief maybe too sometimes. Maybe.
And I look through the chat to see if there are more questions. At this point, I don't see any more questions. Would people like to provide more questions through the chat at this point? Oops. Someone asked, what would you want Alessandra's legacy to be?
Good question. Yeah. Actually, I hadn't thought of that. That's a really good question. I think it's maybe tied in this book. Yeah, I think it's tied in this story, you know, for other families who have experienced mental illness in their families, other families that have experienced death of a child, right? That that her story goes can go a long way to support them, to be a resource for them, right? Yeah.
Here's another one. Are you writing anything these days?
Yes, actually, yes. Yeah, but can I talk about it another time? I'd rather not talk about what I'm writing right now. Although I am in the process of editing an anthology on, along with my sister, on family secrets. So we're busy doing that. Yeah.
And there's a question that comes back and is, how has Alessandra's death affected like the family, your circle, the family? Do you want to speak about that?
Yeah, you know, I think that sometimes people say, you know, how long will it take for you to get over it? You know, when you're expected to get over it at a certain time, you know, and then you move along and forget. And I don't think people ever do that, you know, you don't get over it. I think it's more integrating it into your life, right? So the ability to hold a few things at once, you know, to hold the missing, to hold the sadness, to hold that hole in your heart, right? And at the same time to hold joy, you know, and you know, looking towards things, that sort of thing. I think that that's what happens after a period of time. You know, if after the harshest period of time, as you begin to integrate your grief in your life, it stays there. It's part of who you are, but it's an integrated process rather than, you know, something that you forget and move along. You know? Yeah.
And I see another question. What is being done to make people aware of this book?
Where's my publisher? Where's Greg at Octopus Books? Good question. I guess at this point I hadn't thought past the launch. So if anyone has any ideas, let me know. Yeah, for sure.
I know personally, as you have mentioned, I feel so much can be learned from the healthcare system's perspective that it'd be interesting to try to really bring the book into those circles more.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
And someone added a comment, this would be a good book to pitch to CBC Tapestry. So.
Yeah, actually. Thank you. Yeah. Whoever said that, thank you. Yeah.
And
yeah.
Another question, how do you feel Alessandra's presence now?
Ah, that must be from somebody who has experienced a death. Yeah. Yeah, I feel her presence for sure. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Off and on. Yeah, I think she comes around for sure. Yeah, yeah, for sure. It feels whole. It feels good. It feels really positive. In fact, it feels happy. Yeah, it feels quite happy. Yeah. One thing just to pick up, Rachel, when you were talking about the mental health system, it made me realize, you know, as I was writing and using words like, you know, like depression, etc., that so often our negative feelings, you know, we label them with psychiatric terminology. You know, we say, oh, I'm anxious, or I'm depressed, or I have PTSD, or those sort of things. You know, really co-opt that vocabulary, and so that when we talk about something like depression, if someone really experiences depression, I think there's that sense of having to say, oh, I have clinical depression, or of severe depression, to explain it. So yeah, I just think to be kind of aware of kind of the co-opting of the terminology for sure. You know, it really you know, real depression hijacks your body. It hijacks your mind too. You know, you're not able to live how you want. So when someone calls a low mood depression, the term in fact has lost any real meaning, right? So yeah, so recalibrating on that would be great.
Mm-hmm. Most definitely. At this stage, I don't see any more questions, lots of comments, and I hope we'll be able to capture them for you to read after the launch. Is there anything you would like to add at this point?
Just a great big heartfelt thank you to everybody who attended this evening. That's all, for sure. Yeah.
And I'm sure I'm speaking, I see people, excuse me, sending you kisses, and I'm sure I, I, I speak on behalf of everyone. Again, I'm really touched by your um, honesty, by your generosity. And if I reflect on my own experience after reading both the books, I really feel that reading you makes me a better person.
Thank you.
And I really want to thank you for that.
Yeah.
And on that note, what I read is that thank you all. People say thank you, Donna. We really love you. And thank you also for your brave book and for this rich and thoughtful conversation. So thank you, everyone, for attending. And I wish you all very good reading. And thank you, Donna, for everything you have given us tonight.
Thanks, everybody.